In this week's episode of One Piece, Kyros and Diamante's bloody battle in the sunflower fields of Dressrosa comes to an earth-shattering conclusion. Every once in a while, there's an episode of One Piece which has some imagery or a moment that completely moves me. That happened in this week's episode right here. When Kyros defeated Diamante, that moment to me just felt like a big moment of relief. Like, this is really what I've been waiting for in the entire Dressrosa arc, was to finally see Rebecca and Kyros reunited. And it's not even the main event of Dressrosa, and they still handled it really well. And I'm not really a big fan of, like, anime dime store symbolism, like a water droplet or Sasuke stepping on a leaf, but the scene where Kyros actually defeats Diamante by cutting through him and him landing on frickin' Scarlet's gravestone is so perfect. It's so amazing that Rebecca's parents are the ones who defeated Diamante. One of them's dead and one of them's missing a leg, and it still has so much impact behind it. The symbolism is beautiful, and so was this week's episode of One Piece. But let's get to the brass tacks of this week's episode of One Piece. Kyros versus Diamante, how was it? It was pretty freaking awesome. The animation was good, the choreography was especially good, and all of the attacks had a lot of impact behind them. Could it have looked a little better? Yeah, of course it could have. In fact, some of the artwork moments in this episode were downright insane, especially the weird expressions which were coming from Diamante and his overly disproportionate face. But it honestly makes this episode incredibly distinctive. That and, of course, just the look of their battlefield. I've always said it about this battle, but I love the setting. The Sunflowers field is so great, and it leaves a lot of room for even more great symbolism. The scene where Diamante is getting ready to finish off Kyros is fantastic. There's this shot of a flower which gets hit by one of those spiked balls, and it completely crushes it. It focuses simply on that flower. It's letting you know Diamante is about to mess some shit up. It's little moments like that that just make this episode seem all the more epic. That and the fact that Kyros is just taking these spiked balls like a frickin' champ. Kyros himself even claims that he's the ball of anger of Dressrosa. Maybe he should just do more fighting and less Shakespearean speaking. What I will say is, his actions certainly speak louder than his words when he does defeat Diamante in this episode. And of course, inadvertently receiving a little bit of help from his wife. That scene was absolutely gorgeous, especially the transition of seeing him as the toy soldier and then going back to the regular Kyros. Another scene that I thought was incredibly powerful in this episode is when Diamante is defeated, Kyros is sitting right next to Scarlet's grave. Rebecca runs right over to him and he seems completely grief-stricken. He can't even look at his daughter and he's completely silent. And you can just read his emotions. You can feel all of them just swirling around in his head. And this is all going to be resolved a little bit later. But boy, was it so ominous and great in this episode. Also, Nico Robin is a frickin' just champ. She's so frickin' great. Not only does she have the most infectious smile in the world, but she's putting on an amazing front because apparently it looks like she was hit by some of these spiked balls and her back is just completely destroyed and bloody. Nico Robin, you were definitely a hero and you helped out so much in this battle. I can't wait to see more from this character in the future. There's also a small scene of everybody getting all pumped up because now there's only a couple members of the Don Quixote family left. Of course, we have Bellamy, we have Treble, we have Don Quixote Doflamingo himself, and then we have Pica. Speaking of Pica, Zoro versus Pica. That's about to happen. Now, typically in the One Piece anime series, especially like in the bigger arcs of the series, we all know that the battle right before the final one is almost always going to be Zoro. So I'm expecting a lot from this one. I'm not going to try and put it up on a pedestal too much. I've already looked at the preview, and it does look like it's going to be a pretty decent episode. The animation, the artwork, looks like it's going to be really exciting. So I really hope they do justice to everybody's favorite sword user from the One Piece series, because Zoro's freaking awesome. I think that's something that we can all agree on. And this episode right here actually ended with a really nice cliffhanger, with Pica actually like going up to the top of the Dressrosa mountain, like actually going up there by turning into these giant spikes, and it looks like he's going to confront Kyros, but we all know what's going to happen. Come on. Who the hell do you think is going to jump in and save the day? Just look at the preview. Speaking of which, and spoiler warning if you haven't looked at the preview, just skip a little bit in the video. In the preview, Zoro is going to be putting on his old classic bandana. And holy crap, That's awesome. I definitely prefer Zoro in the bandana. I think it made him a little more distinctive, and it also made him seem a little bit more like a pirate. You know, because pirate anime. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? I really like this one. It was a very simple episode, but sometimes simple is good. Kyros versus Diamante, lots of fantastic choreography going from that. Just really good swordplay between the two characters. Of course, Diamante manipulating his sword like a whip is also really cool, and it's just great to finally see Diamante get put against the ropes, especially because Kyros is so freaking awesome, just standing there getting like destroyed by all of these spiked balls and not like even wincing at all. There's a great shot where his arm is like straight out and you see it like just fall right in, and these things are like crashing into the ground, so you have to imagine the extreme pain that is coming from these. But the defeat of Diamante is definitely the best thing. Like I said, just actually his head falling on Scarlet's like gravestone or the marker for it, just that's so freaking awesome and so classic. It's amazing that it worked out that way. So yeah, I really just don't have that much more to say about this episode other than that it was a pretty good battle between Kyros and Diamante. One of the more memorable battles of Dressrosa, and one that I'm going to remember for a really long time. It's definitely one of my favorite episodes, and that's because I really like the characters of Rebecca and Kyros. I've always really loved their story, and a lot of the times in the One Piece anime series, in the individual arcs, they always have these other separate characters who have almost nothing to do with the Straw Hats, who have their own story to tell, and a lot of the times, I think it's really boring, but I've honestly really enjoyed this story. I've loved the reunion between father and daughter, and I think it's just absolutely amazing, and it has some very beautiful imagery behind it. It's also pretty freaking badass, too. This was a really classic episode of One Piece. I don't think it was a perfect episode. I think there are moments in terms of artwork and animation where it could have looked a little better, but still, I think this was a really solid and incredibly memorable episode that people are going to remember for a long time. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. That's right, a near-perfect episode. That makes it a really great episode of One Piece, and one that any One Piece fan should definitely check out. If you're reading the manga, if you're watching the anime, check out this episode. You might see something you like. But before you guys leave today, I would love to hear your thoughts about this week's episode of One Piece, and you can tell me about that in the comments section below. What did you think of the battle between Kyros and Diamante? Did you have a favorite moment from it? Did you not like the episode? What do you want to see in the battle between Zoro and Pica? And what do you want to see from the rest of the One Piece anime series? Make sure to tell me in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!